It's true that I'm a very confident person. That hasn't stood me in particularly good stead in my experience. It's really quite difficult to maintain this kind of personality that I have with my strong opinions, with my carefully considered perspectives that I feel a moral obligation to share in whatever environment that I'm in. That has not done me very many favours in the traditional kind of workplace. It doesn't mean I didn't have allies, it doesn't mean I didn't have supporters, of course I did, and there are plenty of people who will admire it, but it makes me a much more difficult person to manage than somebody who's more focused on just getting along with others and not rocking the boat. So I wouldn't necessarily say all women should just be more confident. I think that what we need to do is build a world in which whoever the person is that we are is welcomed and embraced. And if it truly is a lack of internal confidence and that's something we want for ourselves, then yes, that's something we should work on, male or female. But if we just are somebody who is happy to sit quietly and listen and take a read and get a sense of everyone else before we want to come forward, there's nothing wrong with that. But that kind of personality is often going to suffer as well, particularly as a female or a male, that kind of personality can suffer. So I think for me, it's more about creating new spaces that welcome the whole range of personalities that we all bring, male and female. And that is something that actually I'm starting to see myself as having a duty to do. And I'm starting to see that there are others who perhaps also have that same duty. And maybe it's a calling, maybe it's an obligation, but it's something that's within our power to create new spaces. And we would really be remiss if we didn't do it. But simply being confident by itself is not, there's no recipe for it. It takes a lot of work. And what's harder than being confident is allowing people to see you as your true confident self. That's really hard because as a woman, it just doesn't always work for you and it can really be seen as a negative. So a lot of it is about, for me, is about ignoring the internal voices that tell me to take a back seat and that tell me to try to be more agreeable, and having an internal kind of compass that says, no matter what the consequences are of being your true self, you're going to do it anyway because that is what is required for your integrity. But it's not easy. It's still work. I've always struggled with the internal conflict between being who I am and who I want to be and what I felt everyone else wanted me to be, or what I felt the majority of people wanted me to be. So I've always had that conflict, and I've had varying degrees of success. There's been times when I've been able to be much more my true self and have felt more aligned in my behaviour with who I was internally. And there's been other times when I felt that I've had to really dampen down my true self in order to try to get along, and sometimes in order to survive. The strange thing for me, and maybe this is true for others, is that even when I'm trying my hardest to kind of suppress my personality and to hold back my opinions, I always would get tested and put in a situation where it would be, by my standards, immoral for me to stay silent. So it's one thing to just withhold an opinion. You don't have to share opinions. People don't need to have your opinions. But when there is a situation where if I stayed silent, it would be immoral by my standards, then I must speak regardless of the consequences. And I think that that was part of me having to learn that there really is no healthy way of me suppressing myself. I'm always going to get put in that situation where I feel I must come forward. I must say what needs to be said regardless of the consequences to me. But I'm trying to become less concerned about those consequences. And a really big part of having my own business is that the consequences have gone from real to imagined. It's no longer the case that anyone can fire me. It's no longer the case that if anyone doesn't like me, that's going to have any significant impact on me. Do business with me, don't do business with me, it doesn't matter. Makes no difference to me. I don't even know that you're out there not liking me. So, it doesn't even hurt my feelings. So the true consequences, if there are any, don't matter. And then the only struggle is the imagined consequences, the feeling of being judged, even though that's just a feeling. And recognizing it's just a feeling, and you can let that go. You don't have to exist within that feeling of other people's judgment. And that's something that I definitely work on, but it's an ongoing process.